Today I fucked up by not realizing someone was in the middle of being fired. This actually happened today. The company I work for is sometimes a little bipolar, and there is a tendency for us to move offices sometimes at what seems like a whim. For the last month or so, large portion of our offices have been going through changes due to renovations. The result of these changes is an almost musical chair quality to who is in what office and how long they may be there. So yesterday, the newest area being renovated resulted in one of the women from that area being relocated to the office next to mine. Now we all have a tendency to be a little sarcastic and constantly give each other shit around the office. So today when I walked by the office next door and saw two managers and in there with the recently relocated woman, I didn't think much of it. Then I saw she was packing a box with her stuff. So of course my first thought was it's time for some ribbing. I poked my head in the office and loudly said, "Damn, they must not like you sharing an office over here if they are already kicking you out." Both managers immediately got horrified looks on their faces and started making gestures for me to get lost. That's when I realized the recently relocated woman was crying and packing her stuff because she had just been fired. I felt horrible and immediately slunk off to hide my face. To make it even worse, I didn't get a chance to apologize before she left the office. TLDR walked by the office cube next door to mine and made a sarcastic comment about the occupant packing her stuff for what I know was her second office move in 24 hours, only to find out she was in the middle of being fired. Edit. Okay, so I keep seeing comments about contacting her to apologize. That's not going to happen. From what I heard today, the primary reason of the firing was from some extremely disturbing text messages sent to the owner's daughter the night before. After those messages, I don't think contact with her is a can of worms I want to open. Well, at least you know who's next. 10 years from now you will still replay this scene in your mind as you lie in bed trying to go to sleep. Been there. Hanging out with a colleague in the staff room, a manager came to call him into a room. I joked, "Are you gonna fire him?" "Please fire him." Will never forget the manager's face. I had the opposite problem. A co-worker announced, in the middle of the day, "I'm leaving now," and I, being oblivious to the context, said okay, by then. What he meant was that he was being fired and wouldn't be returning. Later, my colleague said something along the lines of "You heartless bastard," to which I said "Huh." And then someone actually explained to me that he'd been let go. Whoops. Be careful, op. Many years ago I was in a training class for my job. Two people were pulled out of the training in the morning, and a supervisor, also a part of the training class, started laughing and pointing at them saying they were being fired. When we got back from lunch, the supervisor was pulled out of the training class. We never saw her again, either. The only thing you have going for you is that you were joking. The supervisor in my story was not. My office is kind of tucked back in the building, away from the other offices. My boss stood outside my office, which does not have a door. It's not a traditional office space nor job, and fired someone. The guy was across the room and my boss still stood directly in front of me. It was super awkward and also kind of entertaining. LOL. Dude hadn't shown up to work in weeks and tried to sneak in to grab his check. I'm still glad I didn't talk trash though. At one job, I made the joke comment, "Well, it's been nice working with you," anytime I saw someone being taken into a meeting with their manager. It turned out to not be a joke on 3 straight occasions before I stopped. OP should probably send them a message on LinkedIn apologizing for the situation. Related, once upon a time my boss called me the intern into his office and the rest of my co-workers did the "Oh, he's in trouble" in a very joking manner. He was telling me they were cutting my position. Shout out to the mid-2000s automotive downturn, and I had 2 weeks left on the job. Everybody felt awful about it, but I knew they couldn't have known, so it was whatever and didn't hold it against them at all. Had a sort of similar situation when I started my current job. Met someone I didn't meet before, shook hands, told her, "Hey, my name is Cold Freeze, nice to meet you." She replied, "My name is Karen," which doesn't matter because it's my last day. In the most venomous tone. My brain didn't keep up with my mouth and I blurted out, "I can understand with such an attitude." I meant it as a joke, but someone I just met in the middle of leaving her office did not see it that way and I got an incredibly dirty look and a HMPF. As bad as this was, it's not even half as cruel as whoever made her fucking move offices a day before getting fired. Well, that's wrong. The managers should pull the employee into their office or boardroom, not go hassle her in her shiny new office. They say the most important part of comedy is timing. Man, I had almost the exact same thing happen. But the fired guy left his bagel bites and we all ate them. Turned out to be day shift guy's bagel bites. Oh man, I would remember that for the rest of my life. Probably in bed, alone, late at night while staring up at the ceiling unable to sleep. Well shit dude, I'd start packing next cause I doubt they finna appreciate that too much. Count it as a life lesson. Like that cashier who teased me when I learned that my brother was dying. Like don't insist when someone don't seem to want to talk. A much safer joke is when a colleague says I'll be in an interview this afternoon, as in they are giving the interview to respond good luck or hope you get the job. I made one joke about a coworker not being on schedule, saying they were getting fired today. They did. Never have I ever made that joke again, and I still, like 8 years later, feel the shame deep in my bones. I'm still sorry, Jen. So very sorry. Was the door to the office open or closed? If it was open, then the FU was by the managers at your company, not you. I have had to let people go in the past, and usually I'll ask employees in an area to clear out for a few minutes without a ton of explanation so the person that is being fired can pack or cry or whatever they need to without being gawked at. TLDR, I think the FU was by the managers at your company, not you. Many moons ago, when I was just a little retail worker, I had that same give each other shit thing going with my manager. She said something about not wanting to go home to her husband, and I said, "Why? Is he divorcing you already?" He was. I did this once too. I worked in the parts department of a car dealership. Parts manager was notoriously late, but I knew his login information. Walked in one morning and the service manager is panicking and said he can't log on to his computer. Asked if I would put my boss's info in, so he could help the customer sitting in front of him. As I did, I said, "Gee, John, maybe it's a sign," and we laughed. I was right. Later that day, I realized I hadn't seen John in a few hours. Service writer told me John was fired. I had no idea. I would have felt bad if John was a good person. He wasn't. You sound like that asshole coworker we all want to punch. Had a somewhat similar experience. Was standing by the plant door with a co-worker when a guy who had been working for us for over a year or so had all his stuff and was walking out the door. Both my co-worker and I started roasting him about leaving early, like must be nice to leave when you want, and he said he was let go. We were confused and watched him leave, then right as he was pulling out, the plant manager walks up and said it wasn't working out, so they let him go. That happened to a co-worker of mine. He saw another co-worker walking down the hall with a banker's box and said, "Well, it was nice working with YA." He thought the other guy was just walking with a box. Nope. He had just gotten fired. Then my co-worker spent the next 2 months fearing for his life because that fired co-worker was the type of guy that seemed like he could shoot up an office. Just get a friend to do the same to you whenever two managers enter your office, but before they can say anything, make them too mortified to pull the trigger. I kinda did the same thing. Didn't realize someone got fired and went into his office to say, "What's up?" And he told me, "I'm getting shit canned." I laughed, and 2 seconds later, it clicked, and I ran away immediately. Reminds me of the day a coworker asked in the company chat why his bonus didn't get paid. Another coworker jokingly said he got fired. Turns out he was indeed fired and found out a couple hours